Hi, folks. Waiting on Steve and Shiva.
Philip, I didn't put an agenda in there. Let me see if anybody else has put an agenda in there or not. But at least I'll create the attendance and we can build the agenda as we go along.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get a chance either to add it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think so. We have been introduced before. Oh, that was Payman. Oh, no, there's Payman and there's E.
Hello, Samir.
Hey, Payman. I think, Milind, let's start. I think Shiva is here. I'm gonna update agenda items as you discuss them. I know you had some in mind, so. Or
Yeah,
is it
that sounds good.
So Steve's going to join us in 2 minutes.
for 2 minutes? Okay, while we're waiting on Steve, can you introduce yourself? I don't think so. I've had the time to meet you before.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Yi.
I can hear you.
Okay, how about the video?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm the new product manager at Microsoft. So today is the first time I joined this community meeting. So really looking forward to working with you soon. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. I
Thanks,
will be
Steve.
traveling. I will be traveling this evening, so I'll be incognito here, but still listening.
Okay.
All right.
Look back to you.
I wanted to use the time mainly to unlock Shiva's PRs. I think on the directory structure PR, we are pretty close to consensus. I think there's some specific naming suggestions mainly that we could go through, and that will allow us to close that like today or tomorrow. And I think on the registry spec, I think I had only one comment, so we could go through that too. So we could focus our time on PRs. Shiva, is there anything else that you wanted to cover?
So in terms of what? The whole meeting or?
Yeah, the whole meeting. Any other agenda
Okay.
items?
Yes. So I have 2 more PRs made by Sylvia. That's to enhance the GitHub CI/CD for the notation repo. I will
Okay.
place the link in the chat.
Okay. And I think the other item from my side was related to registry spec and directory spec, how the work associated with that can be planned and prioritized. So we'll need some inputs from you, Shiva, there. We can cover that towards the end of the call.
Hey, just for context, what does the registry spec mean in this case?
The registry auth spec, sorry.
Oh, I got you. Thank you. That was the context I was looking for. And just for other things, if you want to put on the agenda, I did just push an update to the CLI commands to set expectations. All I did was fill in the sub commands for each. So we had more to look at. We can iterate more. But I just wanted to at least get that up there so that we can start talking through the existing commands and how we want to improve them. I didn't make any suggestions as to what's currently there now. I have lots of ideas, but I just wanted to get the baseline to start with.
Okay. I think towards the end, if we have time, we can cover that too. Give me just a second. I can share screen.
And I've marked everybody present as attendees.
I think that makes you the moderator for the evening, so thank you.
All right.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Directory structure PR.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. All right, give me a second. Is this? All right. I think right towards the end, there's just a few things. So it's mainly naming. I'm good with the finals. This suggestion by Rakesh, and then Shive said we can just drop the hyphens and make it trust store and local keys one word. Any objections there? Shive, Rakesh?
So I'm fine with flattening with all these names.
Yeah.
Of course, with all the hyphens removed.
Yep. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So local key is one word, trust store one word. And then I think Rakesh also doesn't have camel casing. So I'm good with that. All right, so we'll basically take these two. I don't think anybody has objections there. And let's see. As some minor renaming here, just in this template, you can look at those commands and
Yes, I will do that.
yeah, those are minor. I think this one we need to spend some time on. This is also related to what Steve was talking about earlier, but I think I'm talking about some specific details here. So we are saying generally we are saying if a file with the same name, a configuration file or a trust store policy exists at the system level and user level, the user level takes priority. I think we want to kind of get to the next level of detail here and call out exactly which ones in each of these specific cases, right? Let me open this in another tab. I think there is, at least for trust store and trust policy, I feel we should have kind of the inverse of that behavior, that the system level takes precedence over the user level, unless there's another way to implement it. Basically, in the verification side, I think on the signing side, it makes sense for the user level to have precedence over the system level if both are present. But on the verification side, we need an option where a system administrator sets up the trust store and trust policy, and any other user running or a service running on a host is not able to override those settings and just use the system level settings. Any feedback on that? So I feel like that criteria, whether the system level or user level takes precedence, need to be evaluated for each of these, and then we should make a call.
And you're basically touching on the whole security thing we were discussing last week. And I agree. I think actually it's interesting to think about the usability of the getting started and the overrides. But one of the things we have to think through is how much confusion are we going to create if some overrides go one direction, some overrides go the other. It might make logical sense once you've explained it, but we have to just think through it.
Right, I agree, and I'm okay even like that we approve a version of this spec and we keep the precedents open and address it as a subsequent PR. Even that is fine, but I definitely feel it needs more thought, because unless we have some options of implementing lockdown kind of a, like, basically a user level service should not be able to override the trust policy set by a admin. That would be a nice feature to have.
If the user overrides the everything, it's override only for him or herself. It's not affect other users. And also,
That is right.
yeah, and also the other thing is if you choose to let the trust stores and trust policy to have the system level configuration take over the priority, what about the config.json file? Which one should I use if it both exists in the user folder and also the system folder?
I agree. I think
Well-
it depends on what settings go in the config.json. I think right now the only one I'm aware is the insecure registries. I think are there more settings? I think some registry auth related settings also go there. Is that right?
Pardon?
What all settings do we support in config.json?
Actually, everything except those has clear configuration files like the signing keys and the auth files.
I think, okay, I'll take a step back. So
For trust
basically,
policy, I think trust policy is okay because trust policy has its own JSON file, right?
yes.
Then I think it's okay. Okay.
So the kind of the concern is this. So you said if it is different users. So in a user scenario or like regular human users scenario, that sounds okay. I think the issue is on a host where you have a service running, say the service verifies signatures and launches Docker images. That service is running under a lower privilege than a system administrator account or a host admin account. And I think that is a model that I'm seeing if we can support, where a service account or a user account or role is not able to override trust stores and policies set up by an admin role.
But isn't the other way around, Milind? Like if a user uses a permission to run notation or notary client, whatever it is, library, they can do whatever they want. They can just bypass it. If they have permission for executable, they can do whatever they want. It doesn't matter what permission no trust store has.
They can bypass it. I agree.
Yeah, then it's okay to give user also permission to override the notation.
I think it still depends in depth. What you don't want is, say and again, this is debatable, how much of security it provides. Disabling a verify command outright and taking it out of a workflow which launches images is different than having access to that same role, and that role, an unauthorized user is able to use that same role and modify the trust policy. It's almost like a silent failure where your workflow and scripts work as expected. So you don't see anything. You're running all your verify commands, but the trust policy has been updated behind your back using the same role. I think that's the scenario I was thinking. And we can debate this further. I would just say, if we can open an issue against this specific thing on user level versus system level precedence, and cover it as an additional PR, that would be great. That gives us some more time to think about this. Does that sound fine?
Sounds perfectly fine.
Sounds
to me.
great.
All right.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, so we have to think about just a secure by default scenario. Like somebody shouldn't have to go extra work to secure an environment. And it's also got to be usable by default. And those will be in conflict at times. So we just have to think about what's the right balance.
Yep. I think it still will be usable, as in if you are the only user on your system, like a local laptop or a developer machine, you're probably not going to have system level trust or config. You're going to set it on your own. The only issue is if there's already a admin level, and usually on dev machines, you will be admin too. So in those kind of scenarios, I don't think it presents a barrier. But we want a little higher level of security on build machines. And we want in environments where verification occurs in production environments. All right, I'll open an issue and I'll link it to this.
So we will fix after this PI is merged, right?
Sorry, come again?
So the persistence of the trust policy and trust law will be addressed in another PR, right? Not
Yes.
in this PR. Okay.
Yeah, not in this PR. So we can, I think then the suggestion would just be have a placeholder here saying, I'll make a suggestion with a placeholder and a link to the issue.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, iterative PRs would be great. I don't think we have to boil the ocean with each PR. So I like that approach. I think when we cut a release, we'll make sure we're happy with what we release. But until within a release, I think it's great to not have every PR be a boil the ocean solution.
So the registry auth, I couldn't go through the whole one. I think I just had a single comment. I'll try to get through this tonight and have some more comments. This one, the client must connect to remote services via HTTPS. Does this mean, I think my only question here was, if we have the insecure registry enabled for some registry, that means notation will not allow any auth?
I have a question here. So this spec is for general notation implementation or for a specific notation implementation? Because for specific notation implementation, we can have insecure registries or anything just for testing purpose.
Right,
So
you're asking if this spec is applying at
only
okay,
to
this
the
is going
notation
into-
goal or to some other kind based for example, based on Java or C# or Python?
Oh, you're asking the spec versus the notation implementation for Go?
Yeah.
That's an
Is
interesting
there-
question. I think for this one, it would be abstractive implementation. Like I would expect a Java implementation or a Python implementation to follow the same flow. Whether they can
Okay.
achieve it is a different question, but I think this is almost like what Vanessa's kind of going through.
Yeah. And also here's the comment that says, should we include the insecure registry in the settings? I think it's implementation specific. So for this implementation, we can have that setting, not for all the implementations, because insecure registries is more like a for testing purpose.
That makes sense.
But it's for
Well,
production, I think it's never been said.
We've actually seen that in quite a few scenarios where people are running registries in a cluster and they're in a VNet or they're in IoT scenarios, or they might be using a different auth model with certificates or other things. So I wouldn't assume insecure registries is just a test scenario.
Yeah, then so then we should use like something like client CA cert or CA cert that to authenticate with the server instead of ignoring the validation of the remote cert. So setting the insecure registries, that means, okay, we are running HTTPS, however, we don't care about what the server is.
I'm saying slightly different, that some of them aren't running HTTPS. They're actually just running HTTP, and they might not have any off.
Yeah, but I don't think we should allow this kind of insecure scenario in the spec, but it can be allowed in the specific implementation, right?
I actually don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, basically, it's the client is agnostic. Like the client isn't the secure problem. If a registry is, this goes back to the usable versus security thing. If a registry is running with no authentication, that's a choice of that implementation. I don't see what the CL, like the notation or the ORAS CLI might make it easier for the bad person to do something, but a bad actor who's trying to hack at a registry that's insecure, they're going to run just puts and put commands like with curl. So this goes back to, just because we're making it easy for scenarios that are determined to be valid, I don't think that's an insecure, well, insecure is the primary name. I don't think that's a bad thing for us to do.
I think I can change the word must to should. So so implementation can choose to not connect to the remote server, to the remote servers using HTTPS. Is that okay?
Well, what I'm saying is, by default we should not. But if somebody adds an insecure registries entry, which is what the Docker host does, is the Docker client does as well, right? We're following standard practice here. Then we should allow that. Because basically it's not the client that does the security, it's the server that does the security model.
I think my question was slightly different. My question was, if a registry is included in insecure registries, basically if a registry is HTTP only, do we still authenticate against it, given that the authentication token is going over a insecure channel?
There are IoT scenarios where that is valid.
Okay.
It's insecure. So basically, if the user choose to set the registry in insecure registry settings, that means they are putting themselves in an insecure environment. That means they can do everything they want, as they can hold the risk.
Okay.
Yeah, all I'm saying is, in this case is, if we were talking about the registry side and having this discussion, I'd have a different opinion. What I'm saying is, we're a client, and if a registry decides to be open, that's a call that they're making. All notation and ORAS is, from that perspective, is a usability tool to achieve a goal. If somebody decided to host a registry without auth, the bad guy is going to hack their registry without notation and ORAS. So we shouldn't make, for the good person who's trying to do the right scenario, I don't see why we should.
Okay, I think I get the general.
Get in the way of that.
By the way, the intention for this is to, because you are doing authentication, that means you are passing the credentials to the remote server. So it's better to have HTTPS to protect it for the confidentiality. But if you say, okay, my network is perfectly secure and I don't want HTTPS, then it's up to you.
So this will become a should.
Yeah. Well, that's the scenario of the default is secure registry, right? This is the secure by default model. So if somebody puts that flag in, we're just honoring their request.
Okay. And taking a step back, like this spec, I'm still questioning, should it be in notary project, or this should be a notation specific thing? Is there value in including this as the registry auth itself as like is there anything special in here that we are contributing as part of notary project specifications that is different than general registry authentication?
Are you asking, I think I heard you asking a slightly opposite question, which I'm not sure which side you said. And I think the question I would ask, is there something unique around Notation Go that we're doing as opposed to the notary clients? Any notary client should support these capabilities and registries, because registries are not language agnostic. So our spec for how we interact with the registry should be language agnostic.
Yeah, I guess the question I'm asking is how someone interacts with the registry and authenticates with it, is that in scope of the notary project specifications or not?
I'm suggesting yes. I'm suggesting these specs are notary project specs, so that if somebody wants to come along and do it in Java or Go or Python, that they're just implementing the specs. They're not having to copy a spec from the Go, because the Go clients are not unique to Go. These are registry capabilities. We happen to be writing them in Golang, but they would equally apply to a Java or Python client as well.
Okay. All right. I still have to make a pass through this, but okay, I get some context around this. I think those were the topics that we want, at least I wanted to cover the PRs. And Rakesh, do you want to cover the tasks associated with this in the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stop sharing screen. Let me know if you want me to share.
Yeah, you can share the public spreadsheet.
Okay, give me a second.
So last week, Samir and I made some changes to the spreadsheet. Changed the ownership of few of the items from Milind to Shive and Shive to Milind to unblock ourselves. David and Shive, did you get a chance to go through these items?
Rakesh, can I interrupt for a minute? Milind, can you go back to your document?
The registry auth?
Yeah. So in the first paragraph here, you say, hey, it's fine sending large content with a signature because it's perfectly safe. Right. And then you say, hey, we should do this over HTTPS for confidentiality and authenticity. But what you didn't cover is the fact that if they're not authenticated and they send us a large content, they could eat up huge amounts of storage, and we have no way to associate with a dial service, do we?
Roy, I think what
Sorry.
Roy, I think what you're talking about is the registry side. Like we're a client in this case. Like I can't imagine, like if a registry doesn't have auth on the registry side, that's a configuration of the registry. We're not in that decision process.
So do we require authentication to push, but not to
Typically?
pull?
Well, actually for the insecure registry scenarios.
No, I don't care about the insecure registry. I'm just saying insecure by default. If I push, they have to be authenticated to push, right?
Well, what we're saying is the registry actually just makes that decision. If you send something to the registry without a username and password, without a token, and the registry accepts it, then somebody set up the registry for that, and we should accept it. It's not a common scenario, but that is a scenario that somebody might configure. If a registry requires auth, we of course honor it.
Okay, the only thing that's not,
as client.
The only thing that's not covered in the first statement is basically, hey, we use authentication to preclude denial of service, right? And another reason is not just authentication and privacy. It's more of a case of, hey, this is a way for us to protect against denial of service. Is that not true?
Well, what I'm just saying is you're actually saying from a registry is protecting a denial of service, where from a client, we don't get to play in that decision.
Yeah, I'm just wondering on line 8, it should say, hey, we recommend for confidential and authenticity, but also potentially for protection against denial of service. That's all I'm wondering.
I think I'm with Steve here. That makes sense from a registry standpoint, but
So-
from a client standpoint, that's not really a motivation to prevent
So-
DOS against a given server.
Okay, so our protection against extremely large content would be on the other side of this then.
Yeah,
Correct. It's up to the registry to decide all of those decisions.
Yes, this spec is only covers the client side. So we
Okay.
don't cover the server side things.
Okay, I just wanted them to clear it up in my mind as to where we wanted to cover that. Thanks, Moen.
cool.
By the way, this is notation, so it's only about client side. For the server side documentation, maybe we can have that in the Notary project. But the thing is, registry is not the only method to transmit the signatures. They can be files or other methods.
Yep. Yeah, I think this spec doesn't really apply to registry implementations. I think the current scope is fine.
Thanks, everyone.
Rakesh, which row number should we start from?
The first yellow box, that is row number 16.
Okay.
Yeah, so it used to be the task for refactoring all repositories, Notation Go and Core Go. We separated that into 2 tasks. One is for Notation Go and Core Go, owned by Millen, and the another is refactoring Notation that is assigned to Shive. And coming to the next one, line number 20.
Sorry to interrupt, Rakesh. I think before we switch topics, you asked if Finman or David had a chance to sync with Shive on this.
Yeah, I was going to ask whether they got a chance to look into this after explaining the changes, but David and Shiva can tell me.
No, I have no idea.
Okay. No, that sounds fine. That gives the context how much detail we need to get into here. And yeah, Rakesh, continue, please.
And line number 20, it is generating the JWS signature. So currently Pritesh and me are blocked on this task. So we assign that to Milind. We can take care of this work and then unblock ourselves. It used to Shiva used to own this task, but currently owned by Milind. That means that my team is taking this additional 3 weeks of effort, and in the later rows we will find 3 weeks of effort assigned to Microsoft. On line number 22 and also line number 33, those are sign and verify commands. These are assigned to Shive. They were assigned to Kim previously. So this is still owned by Microsoft. Once the specs are done by Steve, these 2 tasks can be picked up by Shiva and his team.
Shiva, please
Uh,
interrupt if you have questions.
Sure.
We're basically reassigning ownership.
Yeah.
And moving on, we assigned the time stamping work to Shiva. It was assigned to Milind. We looked at the code base of Notation Go, and looks like some part of the time stamping is already implemented by Shiva. So Shiva has good understanding of the existing codes assigned to Shiva. I think there needs to be some refactoring so that we can reuse the existing code. But
And
yeah,
you have a
timestamp.
PR, you have a PR, Rakesh, for the moving the TSA code into just moving the TSA code as is into Notation Core, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is just moving the code. I think we'll have to clean that up and probably add some functionality. Um, that is something
Okay.
Shiva needs to figure out. And the line number 24 is the directory structure implementation. Shiva is already working on the spec. Once the spec is approved, Shiva's team can work on implementing that. This is the additional work we identified and added to the spreadsheet. It was not tracked before. So this is an additional 1 week of effort we are finding. And moving on to line number 28. And yeah, line number 28 is signature retrieval and filtering. This needs interactions with the registry, as Shiva is already working on the registry authentication spec. I think Shiva and his team has a better understanding of registry interaction. So Shiva's team can work on refactoring the existing code and then add additional functionality to retrieve and filter signatures.
I think my suggestion here was to split that into 2 items, retrieval and filtering. Here's, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, Shiva. The filtering
Yes, I
aspect.
agree that to split the retrieval and filtering, and they are basically two steps. Yes.
Can you do it right now while you have the screen open in front of us? Like just copy and create. Sorry to put it on you.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I'll do it. And basically wanted to confirm filtering is not in the critical path, right? Even if we are kind of against the wire and like cannot implement filtering right away in RC1, that should not be an issue. Shiva,
Yeah,
Steve,
great.
can you? Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you. Keep going while we're adding this. Keep going, Rakesh.
Okay, after signature retrieval and filtering, we have signature verification part 1, integrity part. It is actually associated with line number 20, basic signing. So this one is also we are taking care of. We removed Shiva and assigned that to Milind. And the last one, we talked about the verify command already. So yeah, these are the changes on a high level. Shiva and his team is going to work on the directory structure, spec and implementation, and then registry spec and registry interactions implementation, and the sign and verify command implementation. All these implementations and related specs are owned by Microsoft. I think that gives a clear separation between the work we are doing together.
I guess
questions?
Yeah, questions from Shiva or Feynman on this one. And if there are no questions, Feynman, can you update it on the table or at your end? Or I think David talked about putting it all in that new PR project he has created. let's track these items there as well. I'm still using the spreadsheet as a single source of truth, but let's start migrating it there as well.
Samuel, sorry, are you mentioning which line?
No, I'm saying all of these new items that we are saying Shiva should take up, do you want to migrate them also into the project board?
Oh, yeah. I also want to ask what the sequence of the management of these tasks. We have already created a project board, and David is on that board right now. So, and if we want to still keep this spreadsheet, I could help to migrate these new items and create related issues and add them to that board.
Yeah, that's fine. I have no love for the spreadsheet either, but until we have all the items migrated, let's keep the spreadsheet as a single source of truth is what I was saying.
I think personally, I have a preference to using this spreadsheet because we've been moving from system to system, and I think we have stabilized a bit on this. But that's just my preference. I would prefer at least till RC1 we not change the project management tool. We can start migrating and duplicating if we want.
Yeah, I was
I agree.
optimized to get to RC1. If you were issues we're tracking, I defer to you guys, but if the project management could be more efficient in the spreadsheet for RC1.
Okay, let's do that. So for RC1, we'll continue managing it in the spreadsheet, and beyond that goes into the project. Okay.
Okay. Shiva, sorry, Steve, noise from your end. Can I mute you? Okay. I just wanted to go over some items which are like more priority and give some more clarity on some of these tasks. The refactoring task, Shiva, again, ask questions if you have here. I can give more context. We split the original refactoring task into two. So there's one for moving things from Notation Go into Notation Core Go. Pritesh is working on this. He'll submit a PR soon, which has the abstract envelope format, and then a JWS implementation that refactors existing JWS code in Notation Go and moves it to Core Go. So that is one set of refactoring. And then the Notation CLI to Notation Go is registry interaction, any interaction with config or signing keys, etc. I think right now it is mainly registry interaction. The newer plugin implementation is already in Notation Go. So that's kind of how the refactoring is split up. I don't know what else is in the Notation CLI that like logically should be in Notation Go, but that's kind of how we split up the tasks. That makes it easier for each of the teams to work in their refactoring area and not step on each other. Any questions there, Shiva?
No, we can just move one by one. So I see the description is to move the registry interactions and the signature push-pull to the Notation Go from the Notation CLI. I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think registry interactions there's and also registry auth. That's basically refactoring. We have a separate
wait,
for auth anyway.
Wait. Registry auth is a different thing here. So because we are having the Docker auth, that means if we move the registry auth from the CLI to the Notation Go, that means that the Notation Go will depend on the Docker CLI. That's the not
Okay. Okay.
But that can be an opt-in dependence, right? If it's not there, we ignore it. I think the way to think about this is the notation client should that core code base should probably have nothing more than the parameter, basically notation help information and mappings of parameters to the notation go lib. Because I can't think of anything that we'd want in notation that we wouldn't want in notation go. So if a client is trying to interact with the registry and they want to leverage the Docker cred store, they should be able to get that from notation go as well.
I think I'm open to more feedback here, whether the registry auth should go in.
At least
Go
for now,
or
we
not.
should not move the registry auth from the CLI to Go library, because it will let the Go library depends on more dependent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if that is the stance we are taking currently, then if authentication is in the CLI layer, but like how will we split authentication and registry interaction? Like for signature push pull, like will that API take in an auth token?
No, so signature pushing authentications, they just need a they just need a client, HTTP client. Yeah. So basically, the register auth should be configured at the CLI side and pass into the notation Go.
And notation Go will use or as client, which will authenticate against.
Yes.
I think I'll go through the rest of the registry auth. I think you're probably talking about the credential provider and things like that should be in CLI.
Yeah. Otherwise, the notation Go is too
even
heavy.
that, like take the skip client for an example. We want the skip client to use the notation Go library. We'd want it to be able to benefit from the cred store and any plugins. So the skip client should be able to push and pull to an AWS instance as well. So I'm struggling a little bit with what would be why it would be in the notation client. Now, if we're talking about a timing that we could fix this later so we can achieve RC1 now, I'm all for that. But
okay, so
fundamentally,
think about the Kubernetes. So Kubernetes gets the credentials from the secret store. It does not depend on the local credential store or other things. So if we add the ability to execute the commands on the local pod or local host, it's actually adds more attack surface. So notation Go
is just the usability.
But notation Go is used for everything, including the CLI and also the ratify for Kubernetes. So it's not just for CLI, but for the notation CLI, it's just for CLI. So it's different thing.
Well, but what I'm saying is there's going to be other CLIs that want to incorporate notation.
Then
notation notary clients, and we don't want them to have to re-implement everything.
I think we can take a more step-by-step approach.
Yeah,
I think registry interactions through or as client will happen through notation Go to begin with. So that registry interaction will have a auth token present. Is that right? I think that I'm not clear on that, Shive. When the ORAS client, so through notation Go, when ORAS client is used to interact with a registry, when you initialize the ORAS client, you pass it an auth token that is already fetched by a higher layer?
No. So basically, all you need is to provide a username and password to the ORAS library, or you have an identity token. You can just pass that to the ORAS, and the ORAS will take care of all the token interactions.
Okay, so at that point, when we call the ORAS client, the token is already resolved. And CLI will take care of credential provider and how that token is fetched in the first place?
No, in terms of token, so which type of token you are talking about? It's the identity token or the registry token?
I think the registry token, the Docker auth token or OAuth token, those two mechanisms which are outlined in the registry.
It's a different thing. So can you go to the registry authentication spec so we can have a diagram?
Yep, sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's this diagram. So there are 6 steps. So okay. Okay, so the step 3. Okay, notation requests the authentication service for a bearer token for accessing the target resource with local credentials. So for the bearer tokens and everything is taken care of by the ORAS library, but for the local credentials, it should be provided by the notation CLI. For example, username and password, or the credentials that is present to the authorization service, they are handled by the notation CLI. And others like the bearer token or other things are handled by the ORAS library.
I think that makes sense. I think at a high level, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, we already covered these, and then we have the command and the directory structure. I think what I was looking for, Shive, is basically the registry interaction. Like, what is the delta between the registry authentication spec here and what is currently implemented in Alpha 1?
I think it's the registry login. So basically, we need to implement and specify how the notation login works, and whether the notation depends on the Docker auth or not. I mean, the auth config for Docker.
Okay.
So I didn't get a chance to read the spec, I'm sorry, but I think that conceptually, I think we talked about this in one of the PR issues. If the Docker cred store is available, let's use it. Because basically, if somebody's already authenticated with their registry, why not benefit from that? If it doesn't exist, then of course we have to provide a way for the user to log into their registry.
Okay. All right. So
yeah, Steve, can you create an issue for that so we can address in another PR?
Okay. So what is the behavior, or what is in the spec today?
The spec has its own credential file, so and it has own logic. If it's scrolling down to the credential file and credential stores, as you can see, it's different.
Okay, I'll look at it. My ask would be let's not create yet more credential stores when there's a system there. But I think, what do we do when there is no Docker client? But I wonder, I guess there's plenty of scenarios when we talk about non-image scenarios. So there'll be plenty of scenarios when there's no Docker.
Do you want to review this spec? I think it'll benefit from.
Yeah, I should. Yep.
Okay. All right. I think the registry auth. I think what we're looking for, Shiva, is if you can run through the dates again and give updated dates or make sure that they are aligned. And I think to unblock the end-to-end sign and verify scenarios.
Yeah,
we have some registry. Go on. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, I think I can work that with payment.
Okay.
Yeah. I will discuss with Shui's team and confirm the target date.
Okay. And I think we want to prioritize the authentication and registry interactions. That is one set. We also have the directory structure, which I think if we do it later will cause some churn. I don't know how many resources you have to work on this, but having at least 2 tracks will really help. And I think the rest, signature filtering is lower priority. The timestamping and the actual commands, sign and verify, are lower priority. We still need to work through the lower level details before we can go and refine the commands. But yeah, at a high level, I would say both the directory structure implementation and registry interaction with ORAS client is already there in some form. I think it's mainly refactoring it. And then the authentication, whatever delta we have based on the spec. So these 3 tasks seem to be important.
Hey, among this, line number 19 was that bug that we wanted Shiva to look at right away. Shiva, were you able to look at that and add any comments to that?
Yes, I've looked at that. I don't think it's a bug. It must be a custom error.
Okay, I will let our side know. Okay.
Yeah. So
and I think that was the only thing holding up the Notation Go release. So I don't know if we want to just go ahead and release it now.
Let me check with, I think I'll ping you on the Slack channel by tomorrow. Let me ask Jimmy on that one. I'll ping you, David, on it tomorrow if you're ready to build.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Let's go back to, I think Shiva, you had some PR approvals. We're running out of time, but I think we covered some of it already, but floor to you to talk about your PR approvals.
Yes, there's 2 more PR on the GitHub CI/CD. So it's in the notation repo. The PR number is 199 and 198.
Okay.
So Milan, you have to look at it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then moving on to the last item was okay, 2 items.
Yeah, so just let me just briefly talk about these 2 PRs. So these 2 PRs are presented by Sylvia, who is a engineer in my team. So this one is to run the unit test in the GitHub workflow, so that all the PRs made to the main branch will run this test. Finally, we have that. Right.
Yes.
So yeah, and another PR is to run the code scan tool, which is called code QL. Okay, so basically it scans all the vulnerabilities. Yeah.
Oh, I think that is 190, 198. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yes. So this 2 PR is ready to be reviewed, and once it's merged or in parallel, Sylvia will also working on the GitHub actions for the Notation Go and the Notation Core Go repos.
Cool. That sounds great. All right.
Okay.
I think
Steve had an action item to bring up his PR for CLI commands. I think we all can review and just give feedback on that one. Or Steve, if you want to share your screen, or I see your PR coming.
Yeah, I'm driving. I mean, all I did was capture what's currently there. It's just an incremental improvement. So now that that's there, we can start putting things in like what should sign return, what should verify return, what should inspect return. So it's what's in there now is in fact, we might want to merge that because that reflects what's currently in the client. And then we could do PR. So what we're really doing is we're reviewing the changes we want to make.
Okay, this sounds good. I think if it just reflects the current state, I'll go through it and we can probably put this in as the baseline version. I just want to say that with the kind of the disclaimer that this is the set that was implemented for Alpha 1 and that can diverge from what we want in RC1, like for example, the cert commands that we talked about.
Absolutely.
And the second thing was, I think the next iteration should focus primarily on the sign and verify. And I think at least for the sign, just giving kind of some pointers on the areas that are contentious is the tag versus digest signing. I think we want to see, I think we understand that tag signing is required. That is a usability thing that we want to give. But are there ways to highlight to the user that they should prefer digest and make discovering digest easier? I think that's where some thought needs to be put.
Yeah, totally agree. And just to be clear, like what we're talking about is we're not actually talking about, and I know this is not what you mean, but I just want to say it for clarity. We do want to do tag signing, but that's not what you're saying. What right now we pass a tag in and we deduce the digest and then we sign the digest. So it's really just a usability issue right now. And I think and an important usability and security, because the problem is that if the user does not have a digest, then we're just making it harder for them to go get the digest and then they pass it to us. What I think we want to achieve is if the user does have a digest, they should use that because that is the most secure thing, the most secure way to sign it.
Yeah.
So I think we just have to walk through what the use cases are, or what the capabilities are in the workflows, more the workflow than the use case. And then we can figure out the best way to handle it.
So usually quick question there, when you do Docker push or use any of the other registry tools which allow you to push, do those commands respond back on the CLI response with here's the digest that was generated?
That's a good question. Generally speaking, I've seen that in the Docker CLI, but it's like in a crunched output, right? Like you would have to like rep the output to figure it out. Thing that's kind of, so it's a great question. And that's why what I'm suggesting is your goal is not wrong. The problem is, can we achieve the goal uniquely here, or do we have to create a larger influence like in BuildKit and others? Because technically you can't even push something that is a tag only in the Docker client. That's something we want to fix. Like we want to be able to push something that's untagged, then sign it and then tag it. But that's not currently supported in the Docker client. So I think it's just a matter of figuring out how can we do the right balance of usability and security and then drive incremental improvements across the various tools.
Right, and I think we had talked about, I'm just reiterating this, the security concern. The concern is basically when you're signing a tag, there is no separate, and that the digest behind the tag can change. So if you have sufficient delay between when you initially push something and tagged it, and then you say sign this tag, it may not be the same thing that you intended. It could have changed behind the scenes. And I think that's where we want to drive the behavior to digest wherever possible.
I mean, we're talking milliseconds, right? And I'm not, that's how security people will try to find the hole. So I'm not disagreeing with you. This is a perfect security issue. It's just a matter of, and this is where we might be able to do, like, Shiwei started down a path of doing a Docker plugin that actually would do a Docker push with sign. So he didn't get a chance to finish it, but because it got more complicated quickly. But I think that's the case where, maybe we can get the BuildKit scenarios, the Docker folks engaged more to achieve the right goal.
Okay.
Because we have the same problem on updating a tag, like intentionally updating a tag. If you're trying to push an update to a tag, like there is a gap there that has a different problem, you can pull an untagged digest. So want to solve it.
Okay.
Definitely.
I think we can probably instead of we can even use a discussion to gather feedback and opinions before we make update on the PR itself, another pass on the PR itself for how sign command should change. I'm open to even doing that.
Sounds great.
All right. I think we covered pretty much everything.
Yeah, I think we did. I looked over the agenda item we created. It's all good. I think Shiva and Femin, I think we'll request an update on those action items of start dates where possible. That's a big thing that will allow Steve and me and David to project when we'll be done. At this point, we can't see when we'll be done. Okay. All right, guys.
Yeah, hey, Samir, are you mentioning those items that we are targeted to finalize? You know, for example, the signing and the verification policy.
Yeah, I think every item that Shiva has on that spreadsheet, we should go and update the new start date on it. And with that new start date, we can project when it will be finished.
Yeah.
Every item with Shiva's name on it should have a start date on it.
Yeah, makes sense. One more question here. Actually, you know, David and May is trying to migrate all of those items to the GitHub project board. So do you agree to these things? And shall we have a target date to migrate all of these items to GitHub issues and GitHub board? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about it. So we want to do it after RC1. We can start the migration now, but until RC1 releases, let's continue using the spreadsheet as the single source of truth. But that doesn't stop you and me and David and Yi to migrate. We can start the migration, but I think this team is saying we'll go back to the spreadsheet for the single source of truth until RC1.
Okay, so RC1 should be a milestone for this change. Yeah.
Yeah, but we should migrate to today. Like we should start copying these items into project up today. Nothing should stop us from doing that.
Yeah, I think not only copy and paste, since there's still a lot of work to do.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Folks. Bye.
Cool.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, folks. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys. Bye.